Hello, fellow daughters. Yes, this is a very exciting day for me. And wow, look at all these beautiful ladies here. I have a cold lunch, so if I don't mind talking as you begin eating your lunch. Today's an exciting day because I'm a 5th generation DAR in my family. And there's even other DARs that branch off of my lineage, many of them. So I wanted to I think everyone loves a little gossip in the family. And,
yes, we do.
There's a bit of a soap opera in my lineage that I've discovered through ancestry and stories that have been coming down, and I'm going to be very respectful about it. Because the women in my family have had their trials and tribulations like many of us have had too, and their joys, which have really probably more joys than the trials and tribulations. The patriot that all of the women in the DAR in my family was Philip Casper Bowman in the Continental Army of Maryland, which I did not know, my mother didn't. We thought he was from Pennsylvania, because that's where the whole family was from. But I'm not going to talk about him. Today's a day to celebrate women, because in May we have Mother's Day. Excuse me a second. So, there was a remarkable woman who was my great-great-grandmother, Sarah Musgrove. And Philip Casper Bowman was her great-great-grandfather, that patriot. And I'm going to start off by talking about her. She was born in 1856, and she married a gentleman, and you can see these pictures later if you like. His name was Jacob Harvey Schoaf, and they got married in 1871. Well, Jacob had a nickname, Jake the Snake. Not when she married him. And this is the only picture here that I've ever seen of the two of them that I found on Ancestry. So, they say that Sarah had quite a cross to bear in the early years of her life. In about 1889, so this was about 18 years after they were married. Her husband Jake was convicted of a terrible, terrible crime. What he did was that there was a person named McCormick who attempted to cash a $1,000 forged check against a widow, Catherine Richards' account. She said she knew nothing about this check. Well, Jake, the Snake, Schoaf, he was the one that forged the check, her check. And he actually went to jail. He was awaiting his trial, and the two of them actually had 6 daughters. Their daughter, Dora, and you'll hear more about Dora, who was a DAR, and Sarah, the mother, was a DAR as well. The story is that she brought him a cake while he was in jail, and believe it or not, there was a file in the cake, and Jake tried to file the bars to get out. I didn't know that really could happen. Then a fire was started in the Uniontown, Pennsylvania jail where Jake was, and the inmates blamed Jake the Snake because he lit a match. Well, they added another 5 years to his sentence. 5 to 7 years, but he got out in 7 years. Well, when he came home to his wife, Sarah, she stood on the front porch with a shotgun. In fact, That shotgun was given to me after my grandparents died. I don't have it anymore, but it really was. And she said, "You are no longer allowed in this house. But when you die, I'm happy to have you buried beside me." Well, he left town, and no one saw him again. But he was buried in Ohio, not Pennsylvania, where my great-great-grandmother was buried. So we're not going to talk about him anymore. So they had my grandmother, who was the second generation DAR, was a quite remarkable one. She and Sarah Musgrove, because she dropped the name Shope. She actually got divorced back then. And her headstone at the cemetery says Shope, which was her, Musgrove, which was her maiden name. So my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother were founding members of Fort Gaddis DAR chapter in Uniontown. And Rose Shope married William Abel, and as a founding member, she also was a regent. She was treasurer, registrar, the National Defense, a state delegate, and she hosted many chapter meetings. And you can see her house here. It was a beautiful house. This was a greeting card at Christmas. When I went on the newspaper website, it was so much fun, and I have some of the articles here. Different ladies would host the DAR meetings in their home. Until then, they started getting larger, and they would have it at the First Presbyterian Church, or sometimes some other community centers. And I saw her sisters were helping to host. All of her sisters but 2 were DAR members. One of them, which was Edith, never lived long enough because she took care of her sister Rebecca's entire family who had smallpox. All of their family survived, except out of the goodness of her heart, Edith contracted the smallpox after caring for them, and she passed away. But then there was Eudora. Dora. So when my great-grandmother married William Abel, and my great-grandmother got pregnant with her first child within the first 3 months, which was a daughter named Bertha, who also was a DAR. Oh, a couple months later, her sister Dora was pregnant, not married. And I just discovered all these things within the last year, and my mother, I call and say, "It's Nancy Drew again. I have more family information." Bill Abel, married to Rose Abel, had a fling or something with Dora. So the 2 sisters were pregnant at the same time. So Bertha was born first to the married couple, my great-grandmother's baby. And then a couple months later, Dora named her baby Queen Victoria. Dora was never a DAR. Her sister was a regent founding. So Dora was never in the DAR, the only sister. But Queen Victoria was. She was a member of that chapter, of the Fort Gaddis chapter. All of them were. And some of the descendants from Queen Victoria were also DAR members. The articles were very interesting in the newspaper. Every single 2 weeks, they'd have articles about their Fort Gaddis chapter, and they would talk about what they did at the meetings. Very much structured like our meetings are, which I found interesting. And they often would have some of the daughters do readings, special readings. And they would have roll call. Each daughter, they would go around for roll call and say who you were, and they'd have a topic that you were to share. Maybe one of the meetings I read was, why do I enjoy being a daughter? Or, what does patriotism mean to me? There were those things. And I also cut an article that they were having an anniversary tea, like we are going to have. So, and one article I found which was so special to me was to see, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. My grandmother, who was my best friend, I lost her when I was pregnant with my only child, my daughter. I lost her while I was pregnant. But there was an article that my grandmother was hosting a meeting in her home, and her mother was there, and her grandmother, Sarah Musgrove, showed. And they were all hosting together, and that was a beautiful thing. And her grandmother died 2 months after that party. And then my grandmother and grandfather, they had 2 daughters, but they were 16 years apart, which was a big gap. Their first daughter wrote, so my grandmother's name was Rosamond, and my grandfather was Owen. So I really didn't know my aunt. I don't know why, okay? She just kind of left. And my mother is Catherine. And my daughter was named for both of them, Catherine Rosamond. And so my grandmother was in DAR. Her sister Bertha was a DAR. And my mother just said to me, my mother has a little dementia going on, but in talking about the DAR, and I just saw her last week, and she had a box, and in there was a file with all sorts of DAR information. And she said, she remembers DAR was discussed all the time with her grandmother and her great aunts. That's all they talked about. It was the most important thing. It was something that they cherished, that they were proud to be a DAR. And the patriot, Philip Casper Bowman, everyone knew about him. In fact, when I was a young girl, we all knew, my sisters and I all knew about Philip Casper Bowman. We all were given a photocopy of the Bowman history, and that is in the National Archives that discusses him. So my parents were married in 1963, and then I was born early in the year, and I was born 9 months later. And I have 2 younger sisters. Neither of them are DARs. But today is phenomenal for me to carry on this legacy, and especially in such a special chapter. I have joined as an affiliate. I'm sending my money now for July, the Maryland chapter in the area I grew up. And my mother's going to reinstate her membership. I'm going to pay for her to do that. And I have, this quilt was made by Sarah Musgrove Schoaf, my great-great-grandmother, in 1895. I had an appraiser at the Edison estate look at it, and he says it had been washed, apparently. I never have, but he's fascinated by the handwork. You're welcome to look at it. And I also have a Viewmaster that has pictures of my great-grandparents, Rose and William, who stuck it out, even though Dora had a little flame, of their 65th wedding anniversary. And Sarah Musgrove's 5 daughters ran the switchboard in the town. All four were in the DAR, 24/7, and they knew everybody's business in the town. They knew everything because they'd listen in. That's something else that was interesting. And the house here at the bottom was Sarah Musgrove Show's home that she lived in until she passed away, and it was right next to the railroad. And because she was single, very young, she made it a boarding house. So a lot of the railroad workers would stay there. And then over here, my mother gave me, my grandmother Nanny, her acceptance letter to the DAR and her certificate. And what came with that was she got a booklet called What the Daughters Do. And then I also put here that article that she had hosted a meeting in her home. And then this is my mother's acceptance. This is her certificate and a picture of my mother. She was a junior page for the state of Pennsylvania at DAR Continental Congress in April of 1963. And then when I was born, I got on the cradle roll for the DAR. My mother received one of these when I was born, and also when my sister below me, Karen, was born. And so it says that I'm a member of the Pittsburgh Chapter National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, has been enrolled on the cradle roll. So that was sent to me when I was born. And then I have here my acceptance, what my packet looked like when I was accepted finally. So, and then here's a picture of my mom, and then my nanny when she was a baby. So
Tamara, share how you got into this chapter.
I'm not finished yet, okay? Okay. But the big thing that all of these women did, from the top down to me, because I did this with my daughter, is there was always the tradition of instilling in our daughters as mothers a love of God, family, and country. And I know that's what the DAR wanted you to do, but it was just something we all did. And to have strong values, to respect others, no matter who they were, no matter what color their skin was. And to raise our children with integrity, to be resilient in hard times, and to have the courage to be able to fail, and to serve in various organizations, and to be leaders. I want to recognize Mary Lee Mann, because she has become very special to me. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't be standing here. We were I was attending a session meeting at our church, Covenant Presbyterian, and I heard someone talking about the DAR has a book club in our church. And I whispered to her, DAR? Yes, they meet here. I said, oh my gosh, I haven't heard DAR since I was really young. And she said, I'll talk to you about it later. And we did, and she invited me. It'll be 2 years this October that I attended the first meeting. And, Mary Lee to me represents everything that these ladies here have represented. And she's become just an amazing friend and a role model to me, and I want to thank her. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.